Welcome back to the Valor Flight Crew Podcast, hosted by Echo and brought to you by Vertical HeliCASTS and Vertical Valor Magazine. In this episode, we are joined by Mike Bakari and Sam Schaub from Leonardo Helicopters for a forward-looking conversation about the evolution of air medical services and the aircraft that make life-saving missions possible. Together, we explore how Leonardo is using patient-centered design, automation, and real-time data transfer in shaping the next generation of EMS aviation. From balancing payload with performance to the role of virtual reality training and lessons learned from military innovation, this episode dives into the crucial decisions driving the future of public safety aviation in the US and across the globe. So strap in. This one's all about adaptability, innovation, and what's on the horizon for public safety aviation. Thank you to our sponsors, Metro Aviation and Night Flight Concepts.
Welcome to the Valor Flight Crew Podcast, brought to you by Vertical HeliCASTS and Vertical Valor Magazine. Produced in partnership with Echo, Every Coast Helicopter Operations, the Valor Flight Crew Podcast promotes the personnel and life-saving equipment behind helicopter air ambulance services. Join hosts Mike Fideli and Blake Schreider for in-depth interviews and expert insights from air medical personnel, pilots, communication specialists, and maintenance crews who play critical roles in airborne emergency response.
Line 1 accepting.
Copy, Line 1, gotcha, accepting. You're going to be talking to Red Feather 1 on LCEMS.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Valor Flight Crew Podcast. Mike Fideli and Blake Schreider here, and we are your hosts as usual. How's it going today, Blake?
I'm doing good. A little slow getting up this morning, but I think I'm hanging in there.
I hear
how
you,
are
man.
you feeling, Mike?
I'm still hurting, dude. I am still hurting quite a bit. It has been a rough week. For
Literally,
sure.
figuratively.
Yeah.
For you.
I guess now I can kind of laugh about it, so maybe it's okay to share with our listeners at this point in time. But we'll say in the book of wild, weird, and random things that happened in my life, we'll title this chapter "The Day I Almost Became a Trauma Alert." I decided I was going to go out for a bike ride on Monday and do about 20 miles on the bike. It was a beautiful day. Went up to a state park that was a county or two above me and hadn't been up there in a while. Figured it was a good time to go. Got about 3 miles into the ride. Just get onto the one rail trail area and I'm going down the road, bebopping to my music, having a good time, having a good ride. And I see something like laying across the trail. And I'm thinking, it's probably just a stick.
Red
As I
flag
get closer,
number 1.
Yeah. As I get closer, it was not a stick, and it was definitely a snake. And I do not do danger noodles, so I'm like trying to like do some evasive maneuvering, like lift my legs up, but I can't lift my legs up because I'm clipped into my bike. And so I do some evasive maneuvering, get around it, and all of a sudden my music stops. I'm like, well, that's weird. Maybe I just lost cell phone service. Keep on going. I'm expecting my cell phone service to come back on here soon. Nope, no more music comes back on, and I feel up my ear, and I'm like, man, I lost my AirPod. I'm like, well, shit. So now I need to turn around, pull up my Find My on my phone, and it's like way back on the trail because I had kept riding for probably another mile. And so I go riding back to where I think it is, and get off the bike, and I'm walking, and I'm not connecting to it. And I'm like, look at my map again, and it's showing that like this AirPod is like way down the road a little bit further. So get back on the bike, holding the phone in one hand, riding the bike with the other hand. And it says it's way further down the trail. And all of a sudden it says I'm like on top of this AirPod. So naturally I hit the brakes, except that I hit the left brake, which was the front one, and flipped ass over tin cups. All kinds of road rash, landed on my left side, hit my chest and belly. I get up, brush myself off. I'm like, well, I guess there's no major bleeding. I don't have a flail chest or anything like that. So naturally, I just continue to look for my AirPod at that point, and I'm searching and searching. And I finally connect to my AirPod. I'm like, great, I'm close. I've got to be able to find this thing. And I'm walking up and down the trail, and all of a sudden I look up in the middle of the trail, and there's this snake again, which happens to be a copperhead nonetheless.
Danger noodle.
Yeah, exactly.
No good.
Finally found my AirPod about 10 feet on the other side of this snake, and was able to get out of there unscathed. But thankfully, I didn't have a run-in with the snake. But I said, at this point, you know what? This workout is done. I have had enough excitement for one day. It's time to go home. And I decided to get back in my truck. We're the 3 miles back to my truck, got back in the truck and started driving home. I'm like, man, my chest and left upper quadrant are really hurting. I'm like, I have this bright idea. I'm like, we're learning how to do ultrasounds at work because we're going to be putting them on the aircraft here soon. So I'm like, I'm going to go call my coworkers and be like, hey, can somebody fire up the ultrasound machine? I'll come over and take a look. I just want to make sure I don't have any internal bleeding. So I call them up and I'm like, hey, anybody interested in doing a fast on me? And they're like, are you serious? I'm like, yeah, kind of.
Red flag number 2, don't ask your coworkers to assist in anything medical.
I know,
yourself.
I realize that now, but it only gets better from there. So I finally get to the station and they have like cavalry ready for me. And they got, day shift nurse and medic, night shift medic. One of our EMTs, our EMS fellow is there because he just got back from a cert call out. And they're like ready, ultrasound in hand, and then get in the back of the ambulance. And like they were ready for war. They had IV stuff out. They had finger T stuff out. They had all of these things ready to go, thinking that I was going to be coming in as this trauma alert. So they do the fast exam on me, and they fast exam is negative. And I'm like, all right, thank God, I'm ready to get up and go home. They're like, you should really go over to the ER and get checked out. I said, I don't want to go to the ER and get checked out. He's like, well, you could have broken ribs. I said, okay, great. They're going to tell me I have broken ribs. They're not displaced. Go home and sleep it off.
That's where it ends.
So I was like, I don't want to go to the ER. He's like, well, you really should go to the ER. I don't want to go to the ER. And then they're all like, you should go to the ER. And then strapped me down to the litter and drove me over to the ER. Wouldn't even let me get off the litter to walk into the ER. Rolled my ass in on the stretcher.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
At least they didn't immobilize you.
Yes,
right. Yeah,
yes,
exactly.
Yes. Well,
That's
I
a whole
told them
other
if they,
podcast.
they come at me with any IVs or try
Mobilization.
to do a finger T, they're going to have a very combative trauma patient on their hands. So that was now 4 days ago, and I'm still hurting a little bit. Can't sleep on my left side, and I'm recovering. So it's been a fun week.
Look, the pros are you still did 6 miles overall on the bike.
6.5. I mean, at this point, the half mile counts. Okay.
Yeah, and you found the AirPod.
Yes. That's the most important part of the puzzle. And I did not get bit by a copperhead. So
I was going to say,
We'll
it
call it a
sounds
win.
more like you got your heart spiked when you saw the snake more than anything.
I know, right?
There was a lot of screaming and evasive dance moves occurring. I assure you of that. Thankfully, there were no witnesses for any of that.
Until you find that there's a trail cam and you're going to be
Right.
a
Oh,
meme.
man.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. If somebody's out there that has a trail cam in this vicinity, please send us the link to this footage.
Please do not.
We will play it at Echo.
At least, I
At the
mean,
conference.
at least my pain's only like a 3 or 4 when I laugh now instead of the 9 or 10 that it
Oh,
was
buddy.
earlier this week. So I guess we're moving in the right direction.
Well, honestly,
But-
we're glad you're okay. And I think we all learned a lesson on this. If the weather's nice, sometimes it's okay to just stay home.
Yep. See, working out is bad for your health. Man. All right. Well, let's get into the podcast now that we're done with the story time here. Super excited for this podcast today. We've been trying to get this together for a little while now, and we're getting to sit down and talk with some legends in the Leonardo helicopter industry, and really looking forward to having this discussion. Leonardo has been such a huge supporter of Echo for a number of years now, and if anybody who's come to our conference knows how important that relationship is that Echo and Leonardo have together. So we really appreciate Sam Schaub and Mike Bakari for coming on and joining us on the podcast today. Gentlemen, how are you doing today?
Doing well, thank you.
Yeah, doing great. Even better after that story. And by the way, I'm the same with snakes too, so I would have been dancing as well. So don't worry about it. You're not the only one on this podcast that would have been
I
like
feel
that.
like everyone that's listening feels the same way about snakes. They just may not be willing to admit it.
Yes.
Well, I'm glad we could at least start the morning off with a bang here, having that conversation.
At your expense. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah. No problem. Gentlemen, if you don't mind, maybe Mike, we can start with you if you want to give us just a brief introduction of your role at Leonardo and what got you there to that role. Talk a little bit about your experience.
Sure. So Mike Bakari, been with Leonardo Helicopters now for almost 18 years. So it's been quite the ride. Been in Philadelphia the entire time, so I've seen the growth of AWPC at the Northeast Philly Airport since 2008, and really it was when the 139 kind of started gaining some market share here in the U.S. and has exploded us to where we are today. So I've seen quite a significant amount of growth, specifically here in the U.S. Yeah, I've been with the company for 18 years. I'm currently the head of marketing for the Americas, based here in Philadelphia, and that has a multitude of responsibilities under it. So I have communications, which we call exhibitions, events like Echo, supporting the team and making sure that our messaging and our product placement is appropriate within the industry. I have what we call product marketing. These are our subject matter experts of not just our aircraft, but the competitors' aircraft over all of the market segments. So they're the ones that are putting the value prop together for our sales guys to help win business. And then I get to work with Sam on a day-to-day basis as one of our EMS specialists, and it's been fantastic. He has propelled us in the EMS industry, and I'll let him go into that a little bit more. But it's fantastic when you have individuals that can talk to the medical crew and then reiterate what those needs are back into the company, so that when that aircraft is there, it's ready to go ASAP. And Sam has been very, very influential with us over the last 5 or 6 years since he's been with us. So just a little bit about me. Sorry, Sam, I didn't mean to steal your thunder, but I wanted to give you those props because it's 100% true.
And then, Mike, your background prior to Leonardo?
So actually, I'm not normal. I'm just a regular old civilian. I didn't do the military route. I wasn't a medic or med crew. I finished university at Drexel in Philly. I went and got my master's overseas in Italy, actually. So I lived in Rome for about 18 months, and then asked if I wanted to come back to either a Leonardo subdivision in Orlando or the helicopter division in Philadelphia. And I'm a Philly guy through and through, so nice. I jumped on the opportunity, and then I just learned helicopters over time. When I first got into Philadelphia, I would actually take my lunch and go over to the flight school on the other side of the runway and do an hour's worth of flight training on my own, just so that I could learn
That's awesome.
and know what the helicopter can do, so that when I'm out talking to these individuals that are pilots or are mechanics, I have at least some sort of knowledge. So I kind of grew my knowledge of the industry and also helicopters in itself organically, if you will. So it's I'm not the normal kind of everybody's military or medical or cop. It's funny. I'm just a regular old civilian that kind of just jumped into it. So
we're glad to have you on the podcast here. Thank you for joining us. Maybe Sam can attest to you not being normal, but Sam, welcome.
He knows that.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, Sam.
Yeah, sure. No, I can definitely attest to that about Mike, but Mike really does know everything that there is to know about our helicopters, the competitors, all the different segments. He's a wealth of knowledge, and he's put those 18 years to good use for sure. I'm a nurse by trade. Initially, before I started flying, have a background in emergency medicine, adult ICU, neonatal ICU, cardiac cath lab, and EP lab. Started flying since 2005 as a flight nurse. Also had my EMT license, became a base manager, and then eventually the director of clinical operations at Life Flight of Maine, flying 109Es, 109SPs, and joined Leonardo in 2019 as their EMS specialist, with the responsibility, as Mike said, of having a clinical background, understanding the needs of the clinical crew for what their mission profile was going to be.
Yeah.
Helping them understand what our helicopters can do, to meet those mission needs, and also help our team understand, what those needs are going to be. So I work with the sales department. I work with our engineering. I spend a fair amount of time with the interior companies working on how to outfit the aircraft to, best meet their operational needs. And obviously do a fair amount of time at events and stuff like that, speaking with, potential customers, existing customers, and doing things like this podcast, where we get to talk about our products, educate the public. So it's been a really exciting last 6 years for me, for sure.
That's awesome. Sam, did you ever think that when you were going through EMT school or nursing school that you'd be down the road here trying to really try to clue people in on what it really takes?
No,
to
I
take
initially
that care?
thought I was going to go to CRNA school and just put people to sleep and wake them up. And then I thought that probably wasn't very exciting. So flying around in a helicopter sounded way cooler to me.
Oh, absolutely. Made the right choice. But I think it's cool how the expansion of the care that we bring, and everybody that does the HEMS world, and really seeing the company like Leonardo really grow and adapt to such a need that's out there. We've talked for years about the history of EMS, especially when it relates to aviation, and just people that were strapped to a basket on the outside of a small helicopter, and bringing people in. They just were thrown into a basket, and maybe pilot and maybe one provider in the inside, kind of like, yeah, okay, here's our patient, drop it off and going. And look at where we're at now today with the size and the capability of the aircraft. I think is amazing to really highlight. And we're so glad to have you guys on to really explain to our listeners what you guys can bring to the table.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. I actually think it's been funny. I think 10, 15 years from now, when we look back, to 2025, yeah. I'm very interested to see, just the change over the next decade and a half as technology continues to grow. Things devices get to be smaller. I'm very, very interested to see how not only see how we have progressed, but where we're going to go in the future, because it's exciting. I really truly believe that.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think, Blake and I have been flying for about 13 years each.
Mm-hmm.
And even just the changes that we've seen within the industry from the medical perspective and from the aviation perspective it's exponential. And it's
Yes.
kind of crazy to see just in that short period of time. And I already felt like when I started this, like we were advanced, and to see where we are now, I can't wait to see what the future holds for us. And we've kind of talked a little bit about some of those things with some of our other podcasts, more like on the education side or the medical side, an integration of AI and all of those new stuff that's coming down the pike. So it will certainly be interesting to see how things evolve from the aviation perspective as well.
When every second counts, trust Night Flight Concepts to keep you mission ready. With advanced night vision technology, FAA certified repair services, and expert training, we've got your six. Visit nightflightconcepts.com to learn more.
I agree completely. And from an OEM's perspective, I can tell you one of the major things that has changed is, patient-centric capability. And what I mean by that is we as the OEM are looking at the EMS market or market segment as a major market, and making sure or ensuring that the patient, he or she, we have full body access. You have access to 2 or 3 medical crew having access to that patient. That's on the forefront of our minds, whereas just 10, 15, 20 years ago, it wasn't. So the dynamics have shifted completely, and now that's on our forefront, I'm very interested to see again how that progresses in the future, and because I know for Leonardo, it's on the forefront of our minds when we talk about product improvement.
Well, and that's the whole thing. I mean, you guys aren't just saying like, this is our product, take it or leave it, make it as, figure out how you want to use it. You're saying, okay, well, how is this going to best suit you?
Correct.
And how can we set this up from the beginning to make it a successful mission for your team? And
Correct.
It's a totally different mindset.
Yes. Yeah. And I think it has to be, right? Because these are they're expensive machines to own and to operate. So we have to fit as much as we possibly can into whatever that mission profile is, whether you're specialty care, inter-facility transport, whatever it may be. And we've shifted our focus to being more of a patient-centric cabin, and then how do we fit the profile or the mission in and around that. So I think there has been a dynamic shift within the OEMs.
And Sam, I'll throw this to you. If I know when I first started flying, I was, I started in a 135, H135 EC, whatever. I was always told from the waist up that's all you get once they're loaded, right? That's all you get. Anything below that, you better fix it, because once you load them in, good luck getting down there, right? So, and I always thought like, oh, well, that didn't really make sense until I started flying and really seeing, okay, well, let's take care of those acute things, the really like critical things that are very dangerous to our patients if we don't correct, right? So obviously so many things have changed. The amount of care, the technology, the devices and things that we're bringing to our patients' bedside. From your perspective or Leonardo's perspective, like what are some of those challenges that you have encountered in the past, and how have you kind of addressed those going forward in this air medical aviation industry?
It gets back to a little bit of what we were just talking about, where there's sort of been a mindset shift in air ambulance EMS for, so, if you think back to like Korea, where the patient was, outside the helicopter on the skids, the sole purpose is moving them from point A to point B, point A being where other people are trying to shoot at you, point B being hopefully where you have physicians and stuff.
Right.
I think as, EMS or helicopter EMS evolved in the United States, they sort of took that model. But again, the focus was on strictly moving a patient, as quickly as possible, and not as much on the clinical care that happened inside of the aircraft.
Sure.
And I think, as time has progressed, hospitals have started seeing, as well as sort of just the general challenges with healthcare in the United States, the need for highly experienced teams with, a lot of technical capabilities, a lot of clinical capabilities in terms of equipment and stuff like that. They've said, well, now we can sort of have an extension of our tertiary or quaternary center, bring them out to a patient and improve outcomes, right? And so rather than just saying the outcome is patient move from point A to point B, it's how did the person arrive at point B? Were they actually doing better than when you initially made contact with them? And so
right.
I think that that's better for the patients as a whole, which really should be all of our focus, us as the OEMs. And I think that's what Mike was kind of alluding to, you guys as providers and as podcasters, that the evolution needs to encompass that increased level of capability. And so what we do, from the OEM standpoint is, the 169 is a perfect example. It's a newer one of our helicopters. It was, started being designed about, 10 to 12 years ago, maybe a little bit longer than that, gone into service 5 to 6 years ago. But from the drawing board, they said, this is going to be an EMS helicopter. What do you need to take care of people, now? And then most importantly, because it's not super fast to design a new helicopter, moving into the future. So a large cabin that's relatively square, that's modular, that allows it to be flexible for different types of patients, different patient configuration, different caregivers, orientation around the patient. And so sort of took that from the beginning. And I think what that's given us, we're still working on it, still evolving it, different interiors, different additions to the helicopter itself, is a platform that is centered around the patient as opposed to trying to figure out how to fit a patient into an existing, structure. And that just, gives a better ability, again, to kind of take care of the patients, which is, the primary focus. I don't know if that quite answered your question, but.
Yeah, I think, when you talk about how you're building those out, like I think back to some of the earlier days of Echo, and when we had our conferences in Philadelphia, and you guys were able to invite us over to the plant over in Philly Northeast, which is absolutely impressive, by the way. Amazing setup that you have, and be able to kind of tour the line a little bit. And we were able to have some social events with you guys there, and to see the 169 in person, like, it is an impressive machine. And the mock-up, I think it does great as far as like explaining some of the space in the back, but to actually see that aircraft like with your own eyes and get your hands on it, like, it is a beautiful piece of machinery. Mm-hmm. And the way that you're able to have the space in the back, it certainly is, I think, definitely going to be very prevalent in the future. It's clearly evident how, like, even that aircraft that you had, what at this point, that was probably, I guess, 6-7 years ago.
I think about 5. Yeah.
Yeah,
if I remember correctly.
Seeing that back then, like, it was clearly evident how that was a primary purpose for that aircraft and how you guys are setting things up. And it really, like, it just made sense the way that you had everything laid out in there. And it was really impressive to see.
No, thank you. Appreciate that. And quite honestly, that's Sam. He's the one that is that focal point, that liaison between the customer and then between our internal team that ensures that aircraft is really set up in a manner that is ready to go as soon as you go operational day one. So a lot of credit to Sam and our engineering teams to ensure that the aircraft is ready to go.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't just in the back, like,
no.
It was the entire aircraft. And that's, kind of where I wanted to also like tag on to Blake's original question. But like, we focus on patient outcomes, and we focus on making the workflow better in the back of the aircraft and being able to provide that critical care and really being an extension of the medical centers that we may be affiliated with or the companies that we work for, and bringing that high level critical care. But that goes beyond what we do in the back of the aircraft, right? And it goes with, how you guys are setting things up front and increasing and assisting with the pilot workflow and being able to do what they need to do. So it's kind of looking at, if you can elaborate that on some of those challenges that you guys were seeing within the industry and how you aim to correct that with the implementation of the 169 and how you've changed any of your other aircraft to really like meet those needs, address those safety issues and workflows, and really make this whole team a better performing machine.
Sure. Sam, I don't know if you want me to go first or
either one's fine.
It doesn't matter. So I can tell you from the product design perspective, especially when you look at EMS and other, goes into consideration for other market segments as well, but specifically EMS, we concentrated on three, let's call it three variables: time, terrain, and talent, right? So time meaning how do we get, the aircraft up and running as quickly as we possibly can when that call comes in. So start time to launch, we want to make that, we want to condense that as much as possible. And with the 169, what we have is APU mode, where we can utilize APU mode and be up and running within 90 seconds if the aircraft is on and in APU. So that declutches that left engine. We can, you have access to all of your electrical, all of your air conditioning. So you can have, everything's ready to go inside that aircraft and be able to launch. Speed to get from point A to point B is also part of that time. So we want to make sure that the aircraft is quick getting from point A to point B. But then when we talk about terrain, there's a lot that is out there. Are we landing in a hover hole or hover hold? Are we landing on unprepared terrain? Or is it a hospital interfacility transport? And is there, buildings and everything else around? Do we have to have a Cat A capability in order to get past those obstacles? So all of that goes into the design of the aircraft. And then the biggest thing for us, in and around, and I'll use the 169 as an example, especially on the pilot side, is visibility. You want to have as much visibility as we possibly can so that you as a pilot and you as the medical crew are working together to, when you land inside that LZ, again, whether it be on a hospital pad or on an unprepared terrain, you have as much degree access or as much visibility as you possibly can out of all sides of the aircraft. And for us to move the large majority of the circuit breakers that you usually see in that center console area into what we call the EDCUs, so inside of a touch screen within the FMS, it opens up the cockpit completely, and it makes it for a more safe but efficient manner. So we kind of use, like I said, time, terrain, talent, triple T effect in order to get in there. And again, the talent is not only the folks in the back, but it's the pilots and also the mechanics. So how do we ensure that this aircraft is that dispatch reliability stays high throughout? And that's kind of been our approach with the 169. And we've transitioned that not only into other products, the 189, although it's not an EMS helicopter, but search and rescue and offshore, we've kind of taken that mindset as to what is the value prop of this aircraft and how do we fit it into the large majority of that market segment. And we're also doing it with the AW09 as well.
Yeah, and just to piggyback a little bit on what Mike was saying and expand on a couple of the concepts, I mean, you'll notice that all of the things that he mentioned are really centered around safety, and then I would also add, I would also include the word reliability. Helicopters have a lot of moving parts. There, can be challenges with that. So there's a number of things that we've done to help with the reliability and also with the safety. Mike mentioned a bunch of them, but for example, many of our aircraft have HUMS on board, which is health usage monitoring system that gives the mechanics the ability and the pilots the ability to do predictive maintenance. So that lets them know if any part is, starting to be worn so they can pre-order those parts and have them ready and possibly do that change out, during a weather downtime or something like that. It also reduces the risk of a part failing, during the time of the mission. So both of those, I think, are hugely helpful with both the reliability and the safety aspect. a couple other safety features that I think, we've incorporated onto many of our helicopters that are really nice, especially in the EMS model or EMS market. There's cameras all over the place. So when the pilot's sitting in the front seat, there's a tail fin camera that they can see 360 degrees around the helicopter. They know if someone's walking where they shouldn't be, or there's someone there. The APU mode, like Mike said, in addition to allowing you to get off the ground fast and having, ECS systems and stuff, the rotors aren't moving. So when you're on a scene call, you've got the ability to get out there. You have power. You're not worried about the helicopter not starting or something like that. But none of the rotors are moving, which dramatically increases the safety for all the personnel around. And, as you know, landing on these scenes, sometimes they're with fire departments that work with you all the time. Sometimes you've never met them before, or they're just really excited. I think I saw a news clip of some, well-wishing doctor ran into a helicopter the other day because they were trying to get, I don't know, as close as possible. And then some other little things, like LiDAR, which is a radar or laser on top of the dome of the helicopter that can give you a visual representation, whether or not that's solid objects like cliff walls that you're trying to, hoist people off of, or things like wire. Again, just additional stuff to give situational awareness. And on that front panel that the pilot's looking at, you asked about kind of the workload. All of those screens are able to be moved. So when they're sitting on the ground, they can be bringing cameras onto the screen so they can have that. But then when they want to switch off and file an IFR flight plan, they've got charts in front of them and they can switch off. So it's all kind of like using your tablet where you can take things in that you want to, be using. They're right there and available in the background when you want to switch out to something else. So, I agree with everything that Mike said, but that focus on the patient, that focus on safety, and that focus on reliability is really forefront in our minds for sure.
And what was that old mantra, like the definition of helicopter? It's what, that 1 million parts, rotating rapidly around an oil leak, waiting for metal fatigue to set in or something like that.
Yeah.
Just to create flight. Yeah.
And like that's obviously been, at the forefront of this entire industry, especially over the past, 10 to 15 years. We've really seen so much of a focus on that more than anything else. And, to hear some of the changes that you guys have been making and all the OEMs, I think, are really focused on a lot of that right now. I mean, safety is paramount in every single thing that we do. And, to hear some of those changes that you guys are making, it really is impressive.
Thank you to our sponsor, Metro Aviation. Metro Aviation, the world's largest family-owned aeromedical operator, offers comprehensive aircraft services with 140 plus aircraft in over 25 states. The Completion Center installs medical and law enforcement kits and avionics, serving diverse aviation needs including offshore, utility, VIP, and corporate sectors.
Yeah, I'm so impressed. I remember the first time I was next to a 139. The very first time I got to see it in person and land, Maryland State Police came into shock trauma, and just incredible. And being able to just look inside and see.
You can have a party in the back of that thing.
Yeah, get in. Let's go.
All kinds of room for activities.
Yes. And then fast forward, and then I get to see Travis County Starflight in person, the 169, the first time seeing that in person. And I was blown away again by just like slightly smaller, but still an insane amount of room. And that, like you guys were pointing out, that to be centered around the patient. And I remember looking with the litter loaded cross cabin, and you had complete access to get around the patient, and even with the doors closed, if you had a provider on each side or you needed to hop over to the other side, you could still be secured in a seat. You could get to all the equipment and you were still safe. And you also had a ready access to talk to the pilot. Obviously you're on comms, but if you even need to see this, and hey, can you look for this aircraft? You still have a huge degree of visibility around. So even if you had to take your eyes off the patient and be eyes out for any type of aircraft or anything, you had that capability. And I thought that was huge, instead of just aft facing and certain airframes. And you're like, well, I could look, 180 degrees this way. And that's about all I got. I was really impressed by just not only the size of both of those airframes, but even though, the 169 being smaller, it's still, you have everything and then some to take care of the patient and have need and still be safe and secured in in that airframe. Have you guys seen a trend then? Like, so between the 139, 169, do you have airframes now that are starting to become more popular, less popular, things that are hitting out there?
Well, I definitely think, those larger airframes, especially, as a lot of programs are increasing their specialty team missions, right? So I would say that there's kind of two components where those larger airframes are really resonating with people. So the first of which would be specialty teams where you want to bring additional equipment, additional personnel, and you need the flexibility and the space to be able to do that. And I would also argue one thing that I talk with a lot of customers about is it's not just because you can physically put a person in the cabin or physically put an ECMO unit into the cabin. You also have to be able to reach that and reach the patient. So putting a person in the back of a helicopter that can't touch anything, to me, does, yes, they have letters after their name and maybe it's a regulatory requirement, but it's sort of like the person in the trauma room that's over in the corner. If they can't actually do anything with the patient, that person just needs to leave, right? Like you're not serving any purpose. Sure. So I think a cabin that is flexible enough that allows for the addition of people. Obviously, most companies have frequent riders on board as everyone's trying to orient new people. You're bringing additional providers to, help manage some of these sicker patients that you need somebody like a perfusionist or a NICU specialist or something like that on board. There's definitely a move towards that for some people. I wouldn't say, 100% the US market is going to switch over to 139 size aircraft, but that is being prevalent. The other piece that I think is probably a little bit underappreciated by the market, even by ourselves, although we're pretty aware of it, is the no-lift power load solution that we can fit into both of those helicopters. And it's not just putting the stretcher in there, it's actually having a no-lift solution. So, reducing the, back injuries and stuff. Obviously, you guys are super familiar. Every hospital has no-lift solutions in their ICUs. Every ambulance has a, power load stretcher, because they recognize that all of us that have been doing this for a while can't stand up straight for the first 20 minutes of the morning. And that's not overly good, just for the people, but also, financially, as they're needing to pay out for back injuries. So the ability for us to put a no-lift power load solution into both of those helicopters oriented either cross cabin or longitudinally, I think is hugely important. That also allows all the medical gear to be loaded onto the stretcher and secured there for the duration of transport. So you're not putting it onto their legs, and then when you get in the helicopter, trying to figure out where to put it, potentially, removing one of those. Obviously, if it's an EKG lead, it's not a big deal, but if it's the ET tube, that's a bigger problem. So I think a lot of these things that are allowing for the advanced clinical care and also reducing errors, reducing injuries, we're seeing a huge prevalence. There still is a lot of interest in the lighter market, light twin or single, which Mike alluded to, the 09, we're working on. That's going to have a cabin somewhere between the size of the 135 and 145, but with a single engine price tag and operating cost. Nice. Probably closer to the 135, but without the tunnel. It's a big, wide open cabin. So I think you'll see areas of the market continue to, just need that, especially as reimbursement in the US continues to be a challenge and is a little bit all over the place. People are trying to figure out what the best fit for them is. So we're just trying to make sure that we have products that can accomplish, whatever people's needs are. But you'll see all the way from the 09 up to, the 139 or even the 189, which is the much larger helicopter, patient access and patient being at the center are things that are important and throughout all of those different models. Mike, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
No, you actually you checked every box that I was thinking of. So great job. Nothing more to add. But I will say the one thing we are looking forward to though is that AW09 we think is going to be a very a game changer because of that. It's a cabin of a twin, but the economics of a single, and I think that's going to be a nice little game changer for the market, not just here in the U.S. but internationally as well.
it's a balance, right? Like, and we've talked about this like on a couple other podcasts as well. Like, we as med crew, if there's one thing we can do, it's we can pack a lot of crap into a very small space, right? And like everything weighs something, right? And you need to figure out like what your overall mission is in order to figure out like what kind of aircraft you need to satisfy that mission. And so I was curious, like from the perspective of you guys, like how have you managed to help balance in those regards the capacity of the aircraft or the payload of the aircraft with, the size of the aircraft? Because obviously the larger you go doesn't mean that you can carry more, because the larger you go, it's going to weigh a hell of a lot more itself. Like, how do you manage like all those parts and pieces and then still allow us to pack all of that crap in the back of the helicopter?
So surprisingly, this is pretty much a daily conversation for me.
I have no doubt.
My rote answer is, and Mike, don't fire me for this, but everyone just needs to buy a Chinook. So I'm pretty sure that the
feel like I've said that
just that
more than
189, you would have been fine.
Yes, the 189 does. Yeah. But in all seriousness, you're correct, and I think that this is important for your listeners to understand. It is a balance, because you will pretty much daily we run into someone somewhere in administration wants to spend the least amount of money as possible.
Yeah.
Someone somewhere in the pilot side and the medical side wants the most aviation capability and the most clinical capability.
Yeah.
And you really do have to kind of figure out where the right balance is for you. An example of that would be, we've recently sold a couple of 139s to some pediatric programs, and we initially went in there marketing the 169 because the cabin was really well set up, and thought that it would do the things that they wanted it to do, and it turned out that they really wanted to be even expanding it. Now, the 139 is a more expensive helicopter to purchase, and it's also more expensive to operate, but not a lot. And so they felt like the increased clinical capability was worth that little bit of extra money in the front end, rather than trying to spend a little bit less money and constantly be trying to compromise their clinical capability. Now, that's not true for every single operator. Again, I was saying, definitely we're not going to be flying, 1,500 139s around the United States in the next 20, for the next 20 years. That decision point where, you bring those leaders together and can get on a similar page in terms of the economics, the clinical capability, and the aviation capability is going to be very important. And I think that leads to a much higher level of customer satisfaction when they're thoughtful about it in the beginning, as opposed to, I've got a great deal on this helicopter. You guys go ahead and figure out how to make this work.
Yeah.
It tends to not go very well. And that's, that's what myself, Mike, our entire team works pretty hard. I was actually talking with a customer yesterday about doing a mission analysis, and Mike's team works on this. And I was asking him about some things that he wanted to put into it. And I was like, well, but you probably want to add, an incubator to this, because that's going to give you, increased weight from your departure point. He's like, well, that's a good point. I'm like, you should be asking everyone when they're doing, and the other thing was to fly at recommended cruise. So we can make we can say that our helicopter can fly 4.5 hours, but that's at like 70 knots, right? So there's a speed you can go that gives you the maximum, the furthest distance you can go. That is not how any EMS operator is ever going to fly, right?
Never. Nor do we want to.
So it doesn't make any sense for us to tell you this helicopter will fly 4.5 hours and you can, get to Timbuktu, right, if that's not going to actually operationally meet what you guys are doing. So we try to be very clear in the beginning. We think we have excellent products, but we try to make it realistic. Like, give us, a worst case scenario, give us a normal challenging scenario, fly it, at the speed that you're going to be flying at, put all the bags that you're normally going to be carrying on board, and give you that representation so that, as you're trying to make these decisions, we understand that these are, $7 million, $12 million, $18 million decisions. They're, no one's walking around with, well, most of us are not walking around, and no EMS customers are walking around with wads of cash,
right,
looking,
we all wish we were.
People, but
yes.
So we recognize it's a big decision, but I do think that you need to be thoughtful and not only look at, the price point, when making these decisions, because as you said, Mike, I'm sure that if somebody bought you a 189, you would find enough stuff to put in the back of that thing. But it's a balance,
I absolutely would. Yes,
Yes.
100%. Yeah. We would be ready for every situation all of the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I mean, that was kind of a cumbersome answer, but it really does require all of those different facets to be looking at that, when you're looking at purchasing an aircraft. And I would also include that for the interior provider. So, we work with all of them. I have great relationships with all of them. We don't like one over another. They all do amazing work, but they also do different types of work. And so, I would encourage you that as you're looking at those interior providers to look at, what they've worked on in the past. Does that meet your mission, or is this just the last person that gave you a card? And really to investigate that so that you get the best operational helicopter that you possibly can when you're undergoing that journey.
I think when you said it best, like, if you gave us a 189, we'd fill it to the brim. I think in the pre-hospital world, we try to do that, right? We try to plan for every possible scenario or situation, right? And
pack rats.
Like, not that it's unrealistic, but we should really try to hit home what's the best mix and use to achieve our mission goal, right? And if you guys have found the secret to get aviation, operations, and clinical all on the same page, please let us know.
It's the 90%. You gotta target your 90% mission. So it has to meet your 90% mission. I look at it like a 90%, 9%, and 1%. So the helicopter absolutely has to meet your 90% mission. Like, there shouldn't be any corners cut on that. It just has to do it. Otherwise, what's the purpose of having that helicopter or having that mission? Maybe your mission needs to change, but it needs to cover that. The 9% is going to be where, I think a lot of people start getting into their one-offs, but I think that it's appropriate to think about that. For example, the guy I was talking to yesterday, an incubator IFR flight pretty far is not usual, but it's not like it's never happened. It happens, 10 to 15 times a year, right?
So
and that's where you start to sort of make decisions between clinical, financial, and aviation of how important is it that we keep doing this mission. And that's where, like I was saying about the PEDS program, they decided they actually needed to go up a category of helicopter. That might be the answer. The other answer might be, we're just going to have to do it. We're not going to be able to do a portion of that. And then the 1% is kind of like the busload of pregnant babies that flips over, that like, you're just not going, and what I like to say to people is, that's why you hire people that can think. If you try to create the helicopter that's going to meet any possible asteroid, tsunami at the same time,
right,
you're not going to be able to do it. So try to remove that part of it, and that helps make it a little bit easier. That 9% is really where I think the majority of the work should go on. And it's usually not overly challenging, as long as people are sort of not framing it like, what if there's a hurricane and we need to move 20 people at the same time? It's like, then you need a Chinook. But
right, yeah. But maybe that 9% is what helps people grow where they're thinking of going, right? So maybe that 9% is, so we've had this plan, we haven't run into this all this often, but we know maybe the population's growing, right? Maybe healthcare is changing. Maybe the availability of those specialty receiving facilities or where these patients are going. Maybe that 9% is what really helps drive your program to move to that next level. And then maybe that becomes part of your 90%.
Stay ahead of the mission with Vertical Valor Magazine, the only publication dedicated exclusively to the military and public safety sectors of the rotorcraft industry. The Valor team travels around the globe to bring you stories from the rotorcraft industry's first responders, with a special focus on the knowledge and technology that furthers their missions. Learn more at verticalmag.com/valor.
Yeah, and that's where I would argue that $2 million isn't a lot of money, when you're talking about going. And
I mean, if you got it laying around, I'll take it.
Sure, yeah.
Yes,
right.
Same.
Well, what I'm saying is that in the scheme of a helicopter purchase, that is actually not a lot of money. And so
if you're going to spend 8, and okay, if we get 10, then this will give us that. It seems to be well worth it.
Yeah, and it would be something like, are you trying to introduce search and rescue, or are you trying to do incubator missions with 5 personnel, to a much further? I agree with you. Like,
Right.
Looking at that 9% and saying that we do want to be pushing further into that is one decision. And if some people are like, well, 20 years ago we did these missions, but we really haven't been doing them, maybe you don't need to make your capability that high. Those are all parts of the decision.
And this is not just EMS, we're talking about here. Like, this is all of public safety aviation in general. There's very specific mission profiles that all of our companies out there have, and everybody is unique and individual in their own needs and what they want and how they like to have those operations occurring. So I'm sure that's got to be a challenge from you guys to be able to really kind of tailor each of those missions to those individual organizations and help them make that work for them.
Yes.
But I'm sure that probably keeps you very busy on a daily basis trying to work through some of those things, because we all have our own best way of doing things in those particular areas, in that particular terrain, with those particular personnel and the pieces of equipment that we have. So,
well, I think that's why Leonardo over the last 20 years has so dramatically expanded their portfolio. So we used to have the 109 line, which is the light twin. We introduced the 139, which is, started off being driven by the oil and gas market and easily adapted to the EMS model pretty well. But there was still some pretty big gaps, where those 2 models didn't exactly fit. We've now added the 169 that's between those 2. We've added the 189, which is larger. We have the 119, sorry, that's been around for a while, in the single engine. And then we're adding the 09 to try and give a portfolio so that when we go meet with people, we actually have a solution to their challenges. And that's what we try to find the right fit for and try to do accurate predicting about, what our aircraft are going to be able to do and matching that up and really listening. We take pride in our relationships that we have with our existing customers and our potential customers, that it's really important that we have a relationship where they feel like they can rely on the information, and I'm not just giving them a fancy, brochure or even a not so fancy brochure. And, I'm hearing what they want, and I'm trying to give them the best opportunity to mix the finances, the operational controls, the aviation capability with what they're trying to do on a day-to-day basis. Because the people on the front lines are the people that are going to be dealing with these decisions, and we want to give them the best tools that they possibly can have.
Yeah, I think that's certainly a fine balance, like we talked about before. And like we're seeing it across all of, we said with public safety aviation, and we talked a lot about how things have kind of progressed or advanced from, 10, 15, 20 years ago to where we are today. Where do you see things going in the future? What's on the horizon? Where are we taking this in the next, 15, 20 years, or are you keeping that a secret from us yet until we get there? Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Valor Flight Crew Podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe to hear more stories that promote the personnel and equipment behind the missions in public safety aviation. Lastly, stand by for a message from our sponsors.
When every second counts, trust Night Flight Concepts to keep you mission ready. With advanced night vision technology, FAA-certified repair services, and expert training, we've got your 6. Visit nightflightconcepts.com to learn more. Thank you to our sponsor, Metro Aviation. Metro Aviation, the world's largest family-owned aeromedical operator, offers comprehensive aircraft services with 140-plus aircraft in over 25 states. The Completion Center installs medical and law enforcement kits and avionics, serving diverse aviation needs including offshore, utility, VIP, and corporate sectors. Stay ahead of the mission with Vertical Valor Magazine, the only publication dedicated exclusively to the military and public safety sectors of the rotorcraft industry. The Valor team travels around the globe to bring you stories from the rotorcraft industry's first responders, with a special focus on the knowledge and technology that furthers their missions. Learn more at verticalmag.com/valor.
That wraps up another episode of the Valor Flight Crew Podcast. A big thank you to Mike and Sam from Leonardo Helicopters for sharing their insights on how innovation, patient-focused design, and forward-thinking technology are shaping the future of HEMS and public safety aviation. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and share this podcast with your crews. We'll see you next week for more stories that promote the personnel and life-saving equipment behind helicopter air ambulance services. Until then, fly safe, keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible in public safety aviation, and most importantly, watch out for those snakes.